Okay, welcome everyone to True North Insight. I'm Jill Davey, and this talk tonight is the beginning of a partial exploration of what justice means, justice and the Dharma. A dear friend asked me, what did the Buddha say about justice? And so I was like, let me look into that. Let me get back to you. And so this is something that I could probably spend another 2 weeks of really properly gathering thoughts. Uh, um, so it is what it is. And we'll see. And so the context of this topic is that a very dear friend was part of a class action lawsuit that recently decided but isn't completely finalized yet. It was a class action of Crown wards, which means people who were put into the custody of the state or the crown to be cared for as children. And so this is in Ontario for people that are tuning in on from elsewhere. So this is for children who suffered abuse, physical, sexual, emotional, mental abuse while they were wards of the Crown. So this includes in foster care, in other homes, and while they were in the care of the Children's Aid Society. And this is from a whole span from 1966 to 2017. So you can imagine, I don't know, I couldn't find the number of how many people were part of the class action, but huge. Yeah. And so after many years, I think it was like at least 7 years, but it might have been more than that. I'm sure when the proceedings all started and everything, well, many years of waiting and a huge process for a lot of victims of abuse. And yeah, here it is. The lawsuit was started in January 2014. I can't do the math right now. And so I should clarify that the lawsuit was not about the actual abuse suffered by former Crown wards, either before or while they were in the province's care. But the class action was specifically addressing, saying that their guardian, the Children's Aid Society and the Crown, failed to apply on their behalf for compensation to which they're entitled as a result of that abuse. So, it's a lot of legalese there. So it's not addressing the abuse and trying to compensate for that specifically, but it's saying that they didn't provide the support that they were entitled to as a result of the abuse. Whatever. Now, all that lead up is to say that as it stands now, the decision they came to for people that were abused for years and years, repeatedly and sometimes and all kinds of stuff, up to $3,600 is what they receive. Imagine. And so this dear friend was, is experiencing, of course, the deep pain of that feels like a slap in the face, for all of that suffering. $3,600 up to. And so my dear friend was asking, what justice, what can you teach, because I ask people, what should I teach about tonight? I asked that question, and justice was like the response. So I was like, all right, let's see what I could find out. And I could not find any Pali word for justice. And the few articles that around that said there isn't. So I would like to keep digging a bit more, but it's not something that we hear in the Dharma or in the teachings of the Buddha, this this experience of justice in this way. And it's a very complex word, actually, right? Because it means different things in different contexts. And so, yeah, it helps me to clarify it, and maybe it's helpful to you that justice, this word, is a noun. It's like it's supposed to be a thing. It's like a thing, justice. And it's the quality of being just, being equitable, being moral uprightness. Equitable and morally upright or righteous. Kind of righteous is a bit of a loaded word. The state of being fair. And it's based on this idea that there is some objective morality, sila, ethics, which is the foundation of this practice. And so this is what just means, or being just. And yet this word justice also, we think of our system, right? In this case, I think the question was coming from the justice system, like, oh, where is the justice? And you may know, or you could do some research. There's lots of articles and books and history about our justice system was designed, and still does, it was designed to protect property, right? And to protect property owners. There was an article here. I know I'm doing too much flipping around on the screen here, but there was a quote that I can't find right now, so I'm going to let it go, about what this means. And my spouse, who is a criminal lawyer, understands, and that our system is not about healing. The justice system is not about healing. It's about punishment, and it's about maintaining the status quo of who's in power, and protection of property. So here is a sutta, well, a teaching. Yeah, it is a sutta from the Anguttara Nikaya on the state. It's called When Kings Are Unrighteous. So we don't have kings here in Canada now, but lots of places in the world do. And but we certainly do have that same remnants of that system. So this is called the state when kings are unrighteous. This is really interesting. It's not too long. I hope it's a paragraph. Okay. So when kings are unrighteous, unjust, we could say, the royal vassals, or the ones underneath them, become unrighteous, right? So we could make our own analogy for our systems. When the royal vassals are unrighteous, the Brahmins and householders become unrighteous. So we're just kind of going down through a societal structure. When the Brahmins and householders are unrighteous, the people of the towns and the countryside become unrighteous. And when the people of the towns and the countryside are unrighteous or unjust, the sun and the moon proceed off course. Right? Everything becomes askew. When the sun and the moon proceed off course, the constellations and the stars proceed off course. When the constellations and the stars proceed off course, day and night proceed off course. The months and the fortnights or weeks proceed off course. The seasons and the years proceed off course. When the seasons and the years proceed off course, the winds blow off course and at random. And when the winds blow off course and at randoms, the deities become upset. And when the deities are upset, sufficient rain does not fall, the crops ripen irregularly. And when people eat crops that ripen irregularly, they become short-lived, ugly, weak, and sickly. Ugly, we didn't need to say that, but weak and sickly and short-lived. And then this whole paragraph, as is usually the case in suttas, repeats in the positive. So I won't read all that, but it's when kings or when rulers, when the highest authority is righteous or just, then it proceeds down through the community to the soil and the plants and the stars and the moons. Yeah, I think that's a pretty close statement about what the teachings say about the effects of equity or lack of equity, and how we are all affected, this ripple or trickle down effect, I guess we could say. And so our practice, the practice of Dharma, the practice of meditation, is about awakening to how things are. And it's about freedom from suffering. And so our practice includes naming, recognizing and naming oppression. So this, the many forms of oppression, this violence and abuse we're talking about, racism, ableism, ageism, classism, gender oppression, colonialism. We could go on. And so to recognize, to name, and to commit to action is also part of this path. Commit to action to remove and dismantle oppression. because if any one of us in the system is suffering, we're all suffering. That's like the Bodhisattva vow that we'll continue to continue on this path until all are free from suffering. And yet, and our practice is also clearly to not let our hearts and minds become engulfed in the flames of hate, right? So that this unrighteousness, which is producing injustice and oppression, if it causes us to be consumed by hate, then our practice is definitely out of balance. This is said in lots of ways in the suttas. Often, one of the ways is this: we live indeed so happily, unhating amidst the haters. Among those who hate, we dwell free from hate. And you oft quoted one is that hatred is never appeased by hatred in this world. By non-hatred alone is hatred appeased or ended. This is the eternal law. So hatred does not cease by hatred, by non-hatred, or by metta, loving kindness, compassion. This is the way that hatred ceases. Now, that being said, anger is another story. Anger can be an important motivator, an important activator. Lama Rod Owens says it this way in his book called Love and Rage, The Path of Liberation Through Anger. So this is just in his preface, really, is responding to a talk that he was giving with Reverend Angel Kyoto Williams, I think. And a young Black man, when they were inviting questions at the end of the talk, and he said, as a Black man, I have no choice but to be mindful. And it brings me to a place of anger. I need a little of the happiness, or I'm just going to be really angry all the time. And so Lama Rod responded to him, sharing how we must allow the anger to be in our experience. I continued on and spoke about letting ourselves be angry as the first step to healing the hurt that is beneath the anger. He goes on that I talked about my anger and how learning from my anger about all the hurt inside me that the anger was covering. And that if we don't wrestle with anger, we never get to the heartbreak. And if we don't get to the heartbreak, we don't get to the healing. Reverend Angel also added that our anger points to the grief beneath our anger. So he's talking about the heartbreak underneath, and she's talking also, or they are also talking about the grief. So we don't want the flames of hatred to take over our hearts and minds, because then we're, of course, going to act and speak and respond to our life and the world from that place and cause more harm, and then cause more suffering for ourselves from our regret and remorse of causing harm. So that's just perpetuating the cycle. But to yeah, the anger of injustice, of, yeah, I'll just leave it at that, can be, when attended to with skillfulness and kind attention and wisdom, can be a helpful motivator and a necessary part of the path of healing. Our common humanity, our common Buddha nature, meaning our desire to awaken, to be free from suffering, and our ability to awaken and be free from suffering, it is something we want to plug into and connect to awaken compassion. Compassion is an action. Compassion is a response to the suffering we see in the world. It's not just a nice idea. It's not just a meditation. It's definitely a practice, an action, active. Yeah. So this circles us back to the path and our practice, and how our inner systems, which is all we really have control over, needs to be based in our ethics, right? That first statement about justice is the state of being just, of moral rightness, uprightness, equitableness. And so this comes from our inner practice of what's called sila, of committing to unharmful speech, committing to unharmful actions, committing to non-greed, not taking what isn't freely given, to committing to being skillful with our sensuality and sexuality and not causing harm, and committing to not causing harm by heedlessness due to intoxication. From this place of purifying and clarifying our intentions of how we want to move in the world, then we can respond skillfully and wisely to injustice in infinite ways. You know, that depends on what the intention is, really, right? With the justice. We know that the system is not about, it's about sometimes retribution, sometimes punishment, but it's not about healing the heart. It's not about healing the wounds. It's not about equaling the harm done. Not possible. It's not possible. What is possible is compassion. Compassion and wisdom. These are sometimes described as the two wings of a bird that, and understanding, remembering that compassion is active. It's the response to suffering, our own and each other's and the world's. Compassion is described as the quivering of the heart. you have that feeling. It's actually a felt experience of the heart is touched. The heart is quivering in response to suffering. I think it was here, The Way of Tenderness. Zenju Earthlyn Manuel's book, The Way of Tenderness, beautiful work on awakening through race, sexuality, and gender. Wonderful book. Yes. Whoa. Like that, when you open it right to the page you want. That doesn't always happen. Zenju says, we need, well, they're talking here about how it's often cited that when people are on their deathbed or nearing the end of their life, if they have that kind of experience where they're still lucid, that they often ask or say that they regret not having loved enough. And I thought this was great, because my first response, if I heard that from somebody, would be to say, oh, you've loved so much, and look at all these people that love you. And Zenju says here, we will not have loved enough when the world comes to an end. Yeah, that's so true. We will not have loved enough. We'll have loved as much as we could, maybe, but maybe not. Maybe we could have loved more. But even if we loved as much as we possibly could all the time, would we still say it was enough? There's still just so much more love that can be offered. And so then they're going on from that context and says, we don't have to wait for death to approach the okay. We don't have to wait for death to approach to liberate ourselves from hatred. We can begin by asking ourselves, have I loved enough within myself, within my house, my home, beyond my doors, and into the world? We don't have to wait for death to approach to liberate ourselves from hatred. We can begin by asking ourselves, have I loved enough within myself, within my house, beyond my doors, and into the world? Have I expressed the loving being that I am? Have I borne this love even when someone's heart is closed to it? I am not advocating love or the way of tenderness as an answer to all the ills of the world. Then again, it is just that simple to be love, to be love. We need such love to continue to confront the truth of the prolonged mistreatment that oppression brings into the world. So we need this self-compassion, self-love, love for each other, for all beings, for our world, in order to continue to confront the truth of prolonged mistreatment that oppression brings to the world. And then this, our actions begin to bubble up naturally from the well of multiplicity in oneness and interrelationship. So what this means is that our response, our actions from karuna, compassion, arise naturally. It's a natural response when we see suffering. And hopefully, when we experience suffering within ourselves, it's often an overridden something we override. But wouldn't it be wonderful if we could just respond naturally to ourselves and to each other, um, from the well of multiplicity in oneness and interrelationship. So this means our interconnectedness. It comes from that place of clearly seeing and knowing how from the king all the way to the stars and the moon and the plants and all beings, we are completely interconnected. And from that deep understanding, the natural response arises. Boom. So let's practice. Yes, yes, let's practice cultivating wisdom, kind attention, and compassion. So please help yourself to get comfy. You can lay down if you have pain. You can dim your lights. You can turn away from the screen. Yeah, do what your system needs to. It's very important for these practices of loving kindness and friendliness, compassion, that we bring that care to our being right now. So please take whatever time you need here to get as comfortable as possible. And any sighing breaths you need to just let go of those words and thoughts and any emotions, mind states that may be touched, triggered up, rising up for you from all of that. Maybe you might need some movement or release of tension or sighing breath. So just take some moments there. Beginning to relax your face. Finding a resting place for your eyes, whether that's just with the eyes slightly downcast or eyes closed. And if your system is activated from this sharing and talk, you might need to keep your eyes really open and anchored in your space, or looking around the space that you're in. So take care of yourself. Now, first, we're just attending to noticing any contractions and unnecessary tension that might feel like it can let go a little bit in this moment. And if the heart and belly could soften a little bit, or the shoulders or jaw a little heavier. Feeling the touch points of groundedness, perhaps sensations of hands or seat or feet. And a few minutes here in the silence, just with this tender, kind attention to your being, simply sitting. Simply sitting. Just here, just now. And the first step, if you will, or aspect or part of compassion, connection, is just the simple recognition, acknowledgement, and knowing that suffering, inequity exist. Just that heart acknowledgement that this is an experience that all beings experience to some degree, suffering, and some to an immense degree. And yet more difficult than acknowledging pain, suffering, is actually opening to it in a skillful way. Really gently. So that if you become overwhelmed or caught with strong emotions or mind states, it's skillful to just open your eyes, come back to feeling the body, feeling the ground. Just touching into this really gently. Remembering the Buddha's words that compassion is the response to the trembling of the heart. Heart, mind is touched. Just letting the body breathe, the body sit, gently beginning to open to. We've acknowledged and gently opening to. In the compassion meditation, the first place that we incline, the first direction or beings that we incline the heart, mind, awareness toward and with is someone who we can feel some connection with that is experiencing suffering. This should be a real person, someone that you know. And it might not be wise or helpful for you to choose the person that's experiencing the greatest suffering if it causes a lot of contraction or story for you. And we keep the words and intention really simple and usually just one or two phrases. So see if it fits for you. This inclining the heart with this wish, may you be free of your pain and sorrow. Or may you find peace. May you be free of your pain and sorrow. May you find peace. And you can just internally keep repeating that phrase slowly, but in a way that the heart awareness can really connect with it. Not just repeating words. The quivering of the heart in this wish, may you be free of your pain and sorrow. May you find peace. If there's other words that resonate or fit for you more comfortably or naturally, please use that. Or you can just rest with that heart intention. A few more moments with this connection of someone that you personally know who's experiencing difficulty and heartaches. May you be free of your pain and sorrow. May you find peace. And then begin to close that heart connection with that being. In your mind's eye, you might feel yourself embracing them or bowing or just letting them go. And now we begin to incline our awareness and heartfulness towards our own being. That each of us also experience difficulties and heartache, and watch that the mind might want to go into comparing or judging or saying, oh, but mine is not or is compared to others. And just notice that as a comparing mind and connect to, yes, each of us does experience loss and grief and suffering, pain, sorrow, injustice. As much as is possible for you, connecting to this experience in your own being with this wish for yourself. May I be free of pain and sorrow. May I find peace. Again, if other words resonate more with your heart wish, then use that, or just feel into this connection in whatever way is most available to you. Staying connected to your own being with the wishes, the heart inclining to the cultivation of freedom from suffering, the cultivation of peace. A few more moments with this connection with your own being. And then gently easing out of this heart connection, the quivering of the heart in response to our own experiences and our wishes to be free from suffering. And we incline our awareness now to what could be called the difficult or unfriendly beings. So in this case, it may be being careful with this, but someone who has caused suffering. So please don't practice in this moment with, someone who's been an offender in your life. but perhaps someone who said something unskillful or harmful or has been neglectful in some way. And understanding that this being also is experiencing suffering. And they may be acting unskillfully from their own suffering and unhealed heart mind. So this is not a forgiveness practice tonight. It's just including the awareness that this being also has experienced difficulties and heartaches. And as much as is available with practice, may you be free of your pain or sorrow. May you find peace. May you be free from pain or sorrow. May you find peace. If at any time you feel overwhelmed, remember to just open your eyes or place a hand on your heart or feel the ground. And lastly, we can bow or let that being fade from our forefront of our attention. Let the breath soften or deepen if it's gotten tight. And now we, as much as possible, open our awareness to all beings in all directions, in front of us, behind, side to side, and in each of the four quarters, above and below. All the two-legged beings, the human beings, and all the beings of the earth, the feathered and finned and many-legged. The deep heart's wish that all beings be free from pain and sorrow. May all beings find safety, protection. May all beings everywhere be free from suffering. And as we hear these three bells, they can remind us of the resonance of the heart, vibrating and resonating into all the corners of this life, all beings. So for people that joined us later on the YouTube channel, thank you for joining. And I'll put links down below to these authors and sutta, and also a link to support myself or True North Insight if you are able. Thank you.